The best of the week on Relevant Radio.
I love words. I say that all the time. You know, language matters, right? It always has. And words, they carry meaning. They carry value. I think they can bring great reverence. We just got done praying the chapel to divine mercy. There was a reverence with those words, wasn't there? And lately, I think something has shifted. Maybe you felt it too. Not too long ago, certain words were guarded. They weren't perfect markers of virtue, but they told you something about boundaries. Now those boundaries are fading fast. I used to be shocked, if you heard somebody use that. Words that once stopped a conversation cold, it's background news right now. It's background noise, I should say. But profanity has gone from being an exception to being just commonplace. And the danger I see, and I'd like to get your take, you can join me, 888-914-9149, is when something's everywhere, we stop questioning it. Think back to when you were younger, right? A few generation ago, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, I don't know how long, 40, 50, 60, I don't know how long. Some would say, oh, you get your mouth washed out for saying a word like B-U-T-T, right? Or the word crap, right? If you use that, teachers would correct students for saying that. But and television would guard certain words. God's name, that was spoken with reverence. And now it's used, as an expletive. So, today nearly everything is fair game. You hear this crude language in restaurants. You hear it on the evening news. You hear it in podcasts. You hear it in comedy routines. You hear it in music. You see it in your social media feeds. And even the most sacred names like Jesus or God the Father. I mean, they're now casually tossed out as an emotional filler. And people say, it's not a big deal. Relax. That's just how people talk now. But here's the question, right? You and I need to sit with. What's it doing to you? And I'm not talking about it. Not only has Our Lady in La Salette, when she appeared, talked about this, right? Keeping holy the Lord's name. Not only is it a commandment, right? But science and psychology and faith are all now pointing in the same direction. There was a linguist that explained that profanity isn't just colorful language, that it hijacks your emotional center. It hijacks the emotional center of your brain. There's this guy, Timothy J. He's the author of a book called Why We Curse. And he said that those swear words, and this is really interesting to me. I found this fascinating. He says they trigger the limbic system. So when you hear them, when you use them, they release dopamine. And they embed those words deeply into your memory. And that's why they feel so powerful. That's actually why they're hard to stop. I've shared the story many times with a young man who I know. He's in his 30s, and has a decent job. He's an assistant vice president in a big financial company. Does financial modeling. I happened to be in the area, same building with him when he was in a meeting with his superiors. I couldn't believe the F-bombs that came out of this man's mouth. And I said to him afterwards, I said, "Do you talk at work like that?" Yeah, I was in a meeting at work. I said, "Do you want to be promoted?" I mean, why would you use language? Everybody uses language like that. Everybody uses language like that. And maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Maybe I'm stodgy, puritanical, old-fashioned. Who knows? Am I out of touch? I mean, how do you feel? Do you hear it too? Is this common in professional settings? Has it become just so woven in and integrated into the American lexicon that it's just another word that has lost its shock value? Maybe it's no longer what it once was. But I do think there's something to it. When that word is out, as we said, you have that release of dopamine. It's embedded into the memory. That's why these words have a special power to them. That's why they're hard to stop. But power always comes with consequence, doesn't it? And when swearing becomes habitual, it rewires your brain. It rewires it. It strengthens, impulsive emotional reactions. And it you know what else it does? And here's an interesting thing. It weakens self-control and reflection. Over time, this guy, Timothy J., he was saying that it lowers your emotional regulation, that it erodes your peace. So in simple terms, just to kind of synthesize this for you, you become quicker to explode. You become slower to think. And aren't we seeing that play out right now? Don't you see how vitriolic our culture has become? Don't you see how short-fused people are, whether they're in their cars or, they are on the streets of Minneapolis or discussing politics? You see it there, and also you see it in the digital world. Social media rewards shock, doesn't it? Not virtue, and these algorithms are promoting reaction, not what builds character. And I'm thinking right now the vulgarity is spreading faster than wisdom, right? And it's a shame because young people are being trained. They're being quietly and constantly indoctrinated to believe that, attention matters more than integrity on social media. And as a result of it, we're seeing how people are being fundamentally altered. Did your parents treat language differently than society does now? I'll tell you a story about when I was a kid. My sister and I am one of 5 children, right? And we were young. I think I was in grade school, high school, probably high school, early high school. And we were playing some night game, and we were running around, and I came back in, and for some reason, my sister dropped the F-bomb. And my mom thought it was bad. I said, no, Tara's the one who did that. And I said, Tara said, and I dropped the F-bomb to my mom. I said, Tara said, it slap, before I could even get the word out of my mother is like, she would not tolerate that. That's how it was treated. My mother, it was just abominable to have that come out. Today, I hear parents and kids cursing alike. I do think words have moral weight. And the question, too, and we'll take your calls, is the trend reversible? Or have we gone too far right now? I think we've lost respect for speech. When you lose this type of respect, you lose it also for those around you. You lose it for authority. You see you see an erosion in the culture as a result of that, right? But Scripture's pretty clear, right? From the fullness of the heart, the mouth speaks, right? That's what it tells us, and I often think about that. No foul language, should come out of your mouths, but only such is good for needed edification, that it may impart grace to those who hear it, says St. Paul in Ephesians, right?
That was the best of the week on Relevant Radio. The best way to listen to the best of the week is on the Relevant Radio app, free and always free. Download and share the #1 free Catholic app today in the App Store.